Good afternoon. Ani's here and so is Mark. Woohoo.
Good, 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 good.
Full house. There he is. Haven't seen you in a while. And there's Ani. Yay.
Hey,
Morning
good to
and
be
good
here.
afternoon.
Yeah. Oh,
So I'm getting a contact request from Robert. I'm not sure what that's about.
Oh, I'd always love to stay in contact. Maybe that's just beaming from beyond the ethers. I don't know. I mean, this is a special moment. Mark has a flight map behind his head. I grew up with that. My father worked for Pan Am. We worshiped upon that map.
so
That's
Mark,
amazing.
is that a trip you took?
It's kind of a bit of a red herring because there's one indicator on this map that makes it clear that it's not mine.
That what? It makes it clear that what?
It's not
That
his.
this map is not mine. This is the indicator.
Okay.
It's hard for us to read or see.
I'm just pointing to New Zealand on the map, and there's nothing connecting to New Zealand.
Well,
Is that where you live?
That's where I was born.
I'm sorry. What?
That is where I was born.
Oh, okay.
And I've lived for about 27 years of my life.
In New Zealand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
do you expect to go back?
That's an impossible question. But to say one thing about that, I was in the US from 2005 until 2020, straight through pretty much. And I went back in 2020 for 3 years and then came back early last year. So in some ways I've like kind of had my going back trip. And yeah, if you ask me, will I don't know. Won't I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got family there?
Yes,
Yeah.
all of my family lives pretty much in one town or close to it in the South Island of New Zealand.
Nice. Where in the States do you live now?
In Boston.
Okay. Quite a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Rhode Island for 10 years also, so it's yeah, I mean, it is different, yes, and some days it doesn't feel that different.
Right.
And people are people. I don't care where you are. Yes. So how about a check-in?
Oh, Lord. I've got to check in.
Okay.
I journaled it this morning so I could share it. It's short enough. Something in my emotions that needed to broke last night as I was shopping with a neighbor friend in a local department store. I picked up an attractive wine glass off the shelf, and all of a sudden, I began to sob. As I recalled the damage alcohol had done to my family. I was crying in the middle of the store, and I evidently needed to do that because it just came out. So that's I obviously needed to cry those tears. That's my check-in. I'm I'm okay. I'm okay this morning. I'm fine.
That's great, Ani.
I'm probably better than I was before that happened.
Well, I jumped in to go next because something similar happened to me. As far as physical, healing well. I seem to be healing very well, gaining back energy. So because of that, I went to a book club the other night. And I had quite a catharsis through that because I ended up enjoying myself. These are very intellectual types, which have always scared me to death. I always felt inferior. And there's no reason to, but I simply chose to do that. And this time I said, I'm going to be perfectly at home in this discussion, even though one of the women had done all the research, researched the author, researched his other books, it was James, the book, and it was written by Everett. And she read all of his, she came in with all this preparation. It's very interesting. But I and a number of others had nothing to say. And suddenly I realized that that was fine. Her husband had just died, and this was her being with that.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yes.
The first outing, the first time she'd opened her house up to friends, she told me that. So for one thing, I realized that I'd gone there for a specific purpose, which was talk to her about her husband's death.
Right.
And I didn't see anyone else doing that, so I guess it was well received. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was. But the other thing was that I realized I've always loved people, but I always sort of kneecapped myself somewhere along the way in terms of truly expressing myself to them, whether it's former president of some country at the UN, always feeling I wasn't quite belonging in that space doing it. And so I spent some time thinking about that and realized that I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to try to appear more on top of the facts than I am.
Yeah.
They're little things that I know I've done my entire life. And so far, it's been feeling really good.
Yay. I love your term. I kneecapped myself. That's
in mentally, intellectually, yes, that's exactly what I was doing.
right.
Until last week. I mean, it was sort of integral in my emotional system. And I have things I need to be saying, and I have a very clear an understanding of what that needs to be. I have been building that for years and have not gone out and simply spoken it. So I'm ready to start doing that.
Very good.
Well, your quotes I'm writing in my journal because I'm touched by them. I kneecapped myself and I have things I need to be saying. Bravo, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I come to Deep Dive to hear your wisdom.
Well, I also recommend the book. It's I think I said it, but I'll repeat it. It's the book James by I don't know his first name, Everett, or maybe that's his second
What's
name.
it about?
And what he did, he's a Black writer, author. He's written a lot of books, but this one he had reread Huck Finn about 30 times, is what someone said, because he was just enthralled with the idea of simply turning it around, instead of writing the book as Mark Twain did about Huck's experience, he wrote it from Jim's experience, the
Okay.
black man.
Okay.
And it's extremely powerful, moving book. And yeah, I mean, the way it turned out with when I knew I was into something there, the only comment I really made was that this was an ascension into true manhood by Jim, because by the end of the book, he's saying to a white man, "I'm James. I'm not this guy Jim, who's this runaway slave." And nobody else in the room saw it. It's a totally emotional aspect of the book, and it wasn't covered by statistics and
Mhm.
comparisons to former work. And yeah,
So the name of the book is James,
it's simply James.
and it's by Everett somebody.
The book's
Somebody
in-
Everett.
Huh?
Yeah,
Everett's the last name.
I
Okay,
think that's the last name. I mean, I could tell you in an instant here.
that's okay. I can find it from there, from that.
Yeah, just go to Amazon.
I had heard about it, but I haven't read it.
But anyway, I mean, I can understand why this sort of transformation happened that night, because the book is about a man in his world and how it totally changes as he takes control of it.
Mm.
You know, as controlled as we can be. That he has an intention and he carries it through. And even though he was fighting against, well, he depicts slavery very, critically, but just very believably. That Jim's situation in the world, particularly as he began to do things, stealing a pencil is worthy of being killed. And just the hatred of the white people was just extraordinary. And it's interesting, as I was reading about it, I was looking out over a whole aspect of the news about Trump was, and the people who follow him, was total hatred for people.
Mhm.
Unless they inhabit the same, zone of belief that they do. I just saw how ridiculous it is not to speak up about, the truth as I see it or live it. And Jim's gradually does that with different people. And it just keeps coming through stronger and stronger. He's still called Jim. And he's very careful about speaking in real, what should I say, real English. English as it might be spoken, say, over an advertised, a media station, if they had them in those days, as opposed to the patois that the slaves were speaking, just so they would feel, diminutive enough, unthreatening enough that the white people wouldn't turn on them.
Mhm.
And that whole progression was outlined very clearly.
Mhm.
Until finally he could say to a white man, "My name is James, and I'm not a slave."
Did you just use the word patois?
Yeah.
What? I've never heard
I mean,
the word.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it applies to a line, taking a part of a language and picking and choosing how you're going to use the words. And it's usually a type of language that arises, in specific sections of a population.
Thank you.
For instance, a common one is that English words, the beginning of the word and the end of the word might be removed.
Going instead of going.
Yeah, and or ain't instead of are not, you know.
Oh,
So, and they shift all the time. Even in our current era, there are different ways of speaking the English language.
Hmm.
I'd like to hear what Mark has to say.
I feel like I've been like drawn into some like other places already, and so now I have to come back to myself. And yeah, I guess what's coming to me, yeah, as I start to speak, I've been traveling a little bit in the last month or so. So I think since I think we've spoken once since I was in New Orleans. And then at the start of last month, or no, sorry, start of this month, I was in Florida to see some of my girlfriend's family, and also to go to a music festival. And then we've had a wedding, and I've been to a retreat, went to a lovely retreat called Becoming Earth at the Garrison Institute, which was held by a couple of indigenous persons and also a couple of indigenous elders. So all of that is to say I've been traveling quite a lot and felt a little bit disconnected, and this week's been a bit more grounded. I've been home since Monday, and it's taken a little bit, but I'm starting to feel better for it. So it's maybe general, and then in terms of today, Catherine, you'll know this name, had a lovely conversation with a woman called Michelle Holiday this morning. And that was great to sort of explore, I guess, get to know each other a little bit better, and sort of explore our work and the overlaps and complementarity of it. So that was quite lovely to have that conversation with someone who I would consider a peer and have it go well. Because I've had experiences where either because of me or because of them or because of us, the conversations haven't gone that well. It kind of feels a little bit like sometimes it can be hard to have the ego sort of drop out and sort of elevate or hold space for the bigger picture, which I think is something that is simply a trait of many or most humans at the moment, and dealing with that as part of the work too. So yeah, it was just really nice to have a conversation go really well, and therefore create potential for things in the future. So I'm coming in with a bit of that energy.
Nice.
and Catherine, how about you?
So I, like Robert, am getting my energy back. To be finally done with hospitals and all of that is truly a relief. Yeah, it was a week ago Thursday that I had my last infusion. And they wanted me to do 2 years of oral antibiotics after that.
Oh,
And I said, no, I don't think so.
good, good.
It's astonishing. That just astonishes me that they are so worried about it. And it's so, I mean, it's so easy to flip over, or they're just trying to make money.
That's right.
And it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. It was just such a strange experience. But not having to be involved in all of that has really freed me up in a lot of ways. A lot of ways. Being able to start living my own life, wear what I want to wear, take a shower when I want to take a shower. All those things are wonderful. Yeah. And it's been a full 6 months that I've been engaged in that. So it's really usurped my mental um, awareness and just how I feel. I mean, everything was centered around that. And so to lose that is really good. And then to walk into the election stuff. And I'm really trying hard to figure out a path through that without huge emotional upheaval and stuff. It was not a terrible surprise. Um, it was a real sadness. But what's hurting me most is just watching the potential dissolution of aspects of the government that really are working, like NASA, like NOAA, like, yeah, in particular, those kinds of things where we've really been a world leader in collecting information and sharing it. And to see that potentially dismantled is just really, really hard. On the other hand, the hope is that it needed to change. It all needed to change. There's nothing there that doesn't need to change. And so it will be changed, and then it has a chance to reemerge a new and better thing at some point in time. Yeah. So that's the hope we hang on. And the other piece is just really focusing on what I'm doing now, because to work with the earth is healing. It just is. It just changes your attitude. It just makes life worthwhile. It gives meaning to things. And so just really trying to do that well. I've come across a guy who has created a program that is really easy to use. Like in 5 minutes, he can assess the way water flows over a piece of land. And you get these layers of different ways of understanding that water flow. And that happens to be something that I think cities in particular would be very interested in. It does make it feel like you don't need to walk the land in order to know it, which is not true. But it still has the capacity to have people better understand and be able to work with the land in a way that is more life-giving than before. So we're talking about how to bring that forward into the city conversation and that kind of thing. And that's kind of exciting. So all of that is good. And I've been so well received by the city, I have to say. I spent an hour or so with the senior city planner who was going, oh, this is right on. This is exactly what we need. We have all of these things coming at us and you're offering solutions for that. And so that was really nice. So we'll be doing a training for the planning department early next year and a training for the city council early next year also. Dates haven't been set, but people have said that they will do that. So that's all good. That's all good. And now I've got to figure out how to make money so that I'm actually paid for this, especially if Social Security is going to disappear. Then that's going to be something I'm going to need. So working on that and trying to figure that out so that I can do some grant writing in January and actually see if we can get some money for what we're doing. So that's kind of where I am.
Now, why would the Social Security disappear? Is
Oh, it's one of Trump's things. The whole thing is accruing money, bringing it to me. And so every time it goes out, he just resists it. It doesn't matter where it's to or anything. And I don't know how he can do that. But they've got 4 years to play with it. So I'm anticipating there will be some hiccups that will happen. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't understand that, but maybe I'm just not
Well,
educated.
he doesn't, he has said that, but he says all sorts of things, so you never really know where he's landing. But his trait is to keep money from going out and have it come into him in some kind of way. So, and that's been sort of the whole Republican belief about things, is that somehow you shouldn't spend money on anything except what they want to spend money on. And certainly other people's needs are not a big deal, very important for all of that. So they will figure out or try and figure out some way of diminishing Social Security. And I think there are people in the government who are protecting it and all that. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But I do expect there's going to be some sort of attempt over 4 years to do something with Social Security that would be detrimental to those receiving it. Yeah.
How are they attempting to justify that?
Well, they don't have to justify it. They just have to want it. I mean, they will have some sort of patter for it. They always do. So, yeah.
Do you see a response that could have an impact on that policy?
I don't know. We'll have to see. We don't really yet know how many new people will be in the government. It still does look like there's going to be a majority of Republicans in both the House and Senate. In my view, the whole play about all these horrible people being appointed to these very important jobs is his way of getting the Republicans to roll over and let him do what he wants and to see who's going to resist him. And so we'll see how that goes. We've got some people standing up who are Republicans, and whether they last and whether they are effective, only time will tell. I mean, we just really don't know how that's going to play out. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really a chance for people to show up as who they are or not. Yeah, and we'll see who does and who doesn't. How much people can take, how much of their egos they can submerge to keep their jobs or to keep the boss happy or whatever rationale they use for allowing this kind of corruption to happen. Yeah.
I'm wondering why Americans put him in office. I don't.
There are so many reasons. And the two that I really think are critical are one, people's worry about the economy. There is a real disconnect between, and I read a wonderful article about how the government understands the economy and then how the people do, and they're not similar. So the government's numbers say, "Oh, everything's fine. We have fewer unemployed. The GDP is going up. Productivity is going up. We're fine." And the people on the ground are saying, "BS. I have to pay more for everything. I have I have less real money to do things. I'm pressured. I don't feel good." And that disconnect is there. And that was one of the things, because Trump talked to the disconnect. And the Democrats really didn't. She kind of tried to, but she didn't really get it. The other thing, which I think has not been talked about and is huge, is this whole understanding of masculinity that Trump is promulgating. And that has been bought by a lot of Black men and Latino men and a lot of young men who have decided that they are being persecuted, that their lives are not going right, and it's not their fault, it's somebody else's. And Trump really has played to that very strongly. And I think that was one of the real big swings in this election. Lots of people are buying that. And there's research been done about the younger folks and the split between men and women. Women are feeling empowered. They can do jobs. They can try out things that they've never been able to do. They're feeling like they have agency. The guys are saying, I can't do anything I want to do. I'm not being hired. Girls don't like me. I don't get it. I want people subservient to me again, please. You know, the masculine ego says, I want my way. And Trump has really played to that. So that has been a huge split. And it's really clear in the young folks. So a lot of young men are going to religion. And it's all the evangelical, women in the bedroom and in the kitchen doing stuff, and the men making decisions because it makes them feel better because they don't feel like they're able to make their life work. So it's a pseudo, the word's not escaping me, but it's making them feel like they have a solution when they really don't.
It's playing to their macho. I mean,
Yeah, their need to be in control, and they're feeling that they're not. And instead of really helping them take responsibility, it's all about power over, where you don't have to be responsible. You just have to make people do stuff.
I saw that when I was 18. I saw that about men, and that I didn't want to go there. And having
And we were really working and not being there. But then something has happened that's made it really hard for guys. They've somehow been forgotten, I think, and not really talked to. I mean, when I taught college, it was mostly women. And this was decades ago. And I kept wondering, where are the guys? How come they're not getting educated? What are they doing? Well, if they're not getting educated, they're not getting jobs. If they're not getting jobs, then they're not getting married. They're not getting, a lot of things are not happening in their life, and they're not feeling good about themselves either. And you look around even now, right? Especially at COVID, people woke up and said, I don't want to do crap for the rest of my life. I want to have something else. And then they disappeared, but they haven't come back. So everybody is searching for people. I mean, there's just huge numbers of jobs that are not being filled, hospital jobs that aren't being filled. It's just everywhere that there isn't anybody to do the work. And you have to have education to work in the hospital or to do some of these things. You can't just decide you want to be a nurse, It takes schooling to get there. But people aren't doing it. And I don't know what they're doing. I don't know where they are. But they're really unhappy. And they're feeling that they're being put upon, that they can't have the life they want to have, and they don't understand their own responsibility in it, is my assessment.
so
Yeah,
so
you
Rob
gotta-
and Mark, what are your responses?
I mean, there's one that immediately comes to mind when you mention disconnect. Yeah, there are lots of jobs. They pay $15 an hour, and that, a few years ago, that was considered good. But you work for Amazon, for instance, doing the placement, the sorting out of orders. You're on your feet all day long. You're running in order to meet quotas, and bathroom breaks are frowned upon. And I mean, I read these things all the time in the news feed, and I get, since there's so many, it seems to be a real condition. You work for these people, and this is what you're going to get, is no dignity whatsoever. That goes into all different areas. Hospital, I mean, the doctors and nurses are needing to eat crow a lot now, because they have overlords who are dictating how much you're going to make.
Or
now,
what they can do.
They're making plenty to live on. But okay, you go to the underlings, anyone who doesn't have a full nurse credential. If you're doing bedpans, it could be even less than $12 or $10, or housekeeping. You know, it's just terrible. There's no dignity to be had.
Well, and
Now,
even doctors and nurses are being told what to do. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
I had a situation
definitely.
that I got a PICC line so that they were able to take blood and give me drugs in the same place without having to poke me again. Something happened in the hospital where I was having that happen, and the decree came down that everybody was being poked for things. They weren't going to use the PICC line unless the patient said no. And that was just because something happened. And so some administrator was making this medical decision for everybody in the hospital. And that makes people leave when they have experience and it's being discarded, then they don't want to stay. So yeah, and the wage thing. Yep. Mark?
Well, you know, I feel that one word that kind of encompasses all of it is dignity.
Yeah.
And I would really love to search
Yeah.
into that word with the three of you and me, because I think dignity is absolutely essential to have enough of a favorable impression of oneself that one can be an agent in this world, and what one is good at can serve the purpose of improving not just one's life, but serving the people around you. I mean, to me, this is a basic, sense of responsibility, that one should be able to do these things, because one needs to express oneself that, in a pure way, in order to feel that life is really worth living, even. I mean, just look at all the use of drugs, for instance, these things, and I include alcohol with that. I mean, I did my share when I was younger, and it was all a cover up, so that I could just forget or could feel better. And my friends and I used to talk about it, let's just go get drunk. I mean, and we all knew what we were talking about. That's an excuse for life. It's not living. It's being, led around like a kept animal.
What's the difference between dignity and pride?
Oh, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would like the dignity as it relates to men and women. I'm so aware that, or what's come to me as you were talking, Robert, is it's easier for women to have dignity, to have dignity attributed to her than it is for men to have dignity attributed to them, because women bring life. They have children. They have jobs all the time as wives and mothers, and men have to earn their dignity. Women don't have to earn our dignity. We just have it because we're female life producers. And I had never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Mark?
Also caregivers.
Caretakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Caregivers.
Caregivers. Caregivers, right.
It's often been said in old sayings that, if you're feeling down, give, serve someone else, and you'll immediately be buoyant and free.
It's true.
And men, I mean, there's so many jobs, I gather. I mean, I'm reading about it all the time, not just one or two people, disconsolate people, that a man can give his finest for someone like Elon Musk and then get fired immediately afterward just because.
Yeah.
I mean, there might have been pride for a moment in having done something wonderful, but there was no dignity, you know, imparted by, just what followed. There was nothing that could have some way, living substance to it, something that was yours. Can't think of exact words for that. Anyway, I
Mark, you've
defer
been
to
quiet.
Mark. Would be
Yeah. Yeah, Mark's been quiet.
Mark, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, as I sort of ground into sharing something, just acknowledging that again, there's lots of things in there that sort of started with both your Chick and Catherine, and then sort of a movement towards sense making around the election, and without necessarily digging into any of the specific things that were raised, for a starting point at least, I would note that what we're talking about and potentially experiencing and sort of noticing other people's experience of is an unhealthy world, an unhealthy species, and an unhealthy people in it. And it kind of reminds me of that Anna Karenina, I don't know quite how to pronounce that, idea of all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. All happy families look the same, something like that. Or maybe it's the other way around. And so that is to say that, like, yeah, like we'll see unhealth look a million different ways depending on what part of the system we're looking at, and we're just sort of identifying what it looks like in this moment, and sort of starting there as a starting point. Note that in living systems, like, none of this is sort of a problem per se. That simply is a drift over a period of time, and it will lead to something else at some point, when the sort of stress gradient of this sort of movement of unhealth becomes so great that something else happens, again, without knowing exactly what. And yeah, I mean, this will be a bit abstract, but it is, I think, inviting us to know that what we refer to as governance and governments and politics and democracy and voting, all of these types of things will be different in the future if we're healthy and moving in a healthy direction. And so it brings up the other idea of, like, not sweating the details. Like, what we're talking about in some ways is the details, and so the challenge is to not sweat them, but also to being in the world, having, to the extent we're able, healthy experiences of it, and also doing things that are now afforded because we've had this discussion, and we're building our building our consciousness, and some of us might be able to build our capabilities to take actions that are new to us, that might be part of starting a different pathway towards health, out of this sort of drift that we've been on into unhealth for hundreds, if not longer, numbers of years.
I'm listening for what you have to say about dignity as it relates to men and as it relates to women. Dignity. the dynamics
Mhm.
are different.
Yeah, I think you made a really astute point, Arnie, and I'm unsure if I have anything to add to that. Maybe
Okay.
beyond a grounding in the reality that while a woman, or let's just use the word woman for simplicity, a woman brings the egg, carries the fetus, gives birth to the child,
Yeah.
then nurtures, especially through breast milk, etc., a child initially, while acknowledging all of that, that does occur when sperm from a man is introduced into that environment. And so whilst our in contact role within this process is different, and maybe we might say limited, I don't feel any lesser for it. And I think perhaps culturally we are simply in this period at the moment where men might not be playing that much of a role, or might not be feeling worthy, or any of that type of both practical and also psychological experience, reality. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think there's a way to hold all of this that is what we might want to label dignity, with this respect of bringing a child in and raising a child, that might seem in this moment to be more accessible to women.
Right.
Can I piggyback on what you just said a little bit, Mark? Because what you brought up for me is something that I work with for a long time, and that has to do with connection and separation. So women tend to work from a connected perspective, and men tend to be separated. And that's not a pejorative in any way, but the way I came to that understanding had to do with a book written by Karen Horney, I believe, where she explored what happens to little children when they're born. And when you're in the womb, you are one with the mother. Then you come out of the womb and discover, oh, I am one with the mother. I'm just like her. Okay. And that female then takes almost till teenage years to begin to differentiate and to really decide who she is as opposed to who her mother is, and all of that kind of stuff. A boy child, on the other hand, at around 2, gets the shock that he's not his mother. He is
Oh, wow.
something totally different. And how the society and the people around him respond to that, he is on his own for resolving that issue. He can hate that. He can resist that and deny it. He can say, oh, yes, but, and be able to include some of that feeling and connection. But it's very individual, and it's truly an unsupported, momentous decision. So that sense of separation is something that permeates all men, because they are not like what they thought they were at the beginning. They were one with their mother, and then they were not. And that's not an experience that women have. It
That's
gave
the
me a huge compassion for men, just huge. I mean, that is such a thing to go through, and it is so unsupported in our culture. Or think of the Romans, very supported. You are absolutely not your mother. Let me tell you how not like your mother you are. And we carry those streams. And it is really hard for a man to honor and value that piece of him that is connected. that is, I think, one of the big things in the male society that is just like there and shredded and not dealt with. And I think both women and men have been really out to lunch about managing and paying attention and speaking to that part of maleness. That there is a heart there is a connection there is a feeling space where you resonate with others and empathy, instead of being taught to not honor your feelings, to not have your feelings, to not pay attention to your feelings, which is a very large part of the public message. And it is really hard for individuals individually to work through that space. It's just hard. Yeah. And I think and certainly we're seeing that in Trump. I mean, Trump was truly educated in that. His father and his mentor absolutely brutally taught him that. And it has paid, and some of them, I mean, one of his mentors had cancer and Trump dismissed him because sickness is weakness. He was taught that by that mentor. And he did not pay attention to him once he got sick. He became an anathema. So we have that now at the top level of the government. With no feelings, don't have feelings, don't care. Those are weaknesses. You just don't do that. And when you have men who care, that's a hard space. It's a very hard space. And you're very alone. You're very alone in that. It's your personal hell. Nobody else will validate that or commiserate with you on that. It is just really hard to find support.
It's profound. Do you guys relate to what Catherine is saying? That really that hurts.
Yep.
It's true, but it hurts. Whew. And it helped it formed me, at 18, because I really haven't had much to do with men, actually, in my personal life. And it's that kind of conditioning. Whew. Do you guys relate to that? Have you felt that? What was your experience of your identity and your mother's or your father's, or as a man?
Well, it's very difficult to talk about generalities in this regard because I think everyone has their own situation that you duck into. For instance, I would go out in the wilderness for a week at a time, always by myself, and just felt totally at home.
Yes.
And it was an antidote to coming back and having to work within, a structural system. People were playing roles. That's how I mean that. And you could see the roles very clearly, but I certainly didn't know how to navigate them. And go out in the woods, and I would feel, I used to tease myself, say, well, these are just past lives. No wonder I feel so comfortable out here. But I don't have any evidence for that, not really. But all I know is that it was one way to do it. Another way, people would join the army and there would be this hard edge formed, and never to let anything else draw you back. Other people became extremely, intellectual. All of their energy poured into knowing the facts, man, but none of the feelings. Many men I knew, started to declare, that they were homosexuals, because
As we're bringing the feeling
then it was legit within that community starting about 1970, where you could profess your feelings, and you know that your feelings were a very critical part of you. So, you know, there have been workarounds, plenty of them. And if you're successful, fine, you can grow through it and start to manage whatever deviation you may have felt you were, you know, in. But, you know, it was a long process. And certainly I never went to anyone to really talk about it. That was, you know, every once in a while I'd have a real conversation with somebody. But that depended on who the person was. I remember a conversation that I had that felt incredible with this man who just come back to Vietnam, and
Mm.
we talked from 10 at night until about 3 in the morning in this bar because, you know, he just downloaded. He had incredible experiences. I knew enough about him to realize that a lot of it was true. And boy, he was really working on it, you know,
Yeah.
aligning that with anything he felt to be true.
Mhm.
And, you know, it kind of disconcerted me because, you know, it's hard to communicate across such need. Did my best. But, you know, that no, this is a very real thing.
It is.
And if you get caught into just using, well, fentanyl or, you know, any of those power drugs, it's deadly. But I understand that applies to women too, so it does, no one's really left off the hook.
I wonder what the comparison is of women being addicted to drugs and men being addicted to drugs, and how it speaks to this issue we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anybody have any information about that? I just wonder.
I don't think that's solely a man's, you know, ending. You know, I don't think men are especially disturbed by
Okay.
that. But as a whole, it's a tremendous disturbance, and it shows how people are trapped.
Yeah.
They can no longer get out of it. So feeling this rush of wonderment, and there's no more pain, at least for that while. So you want to go back.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not as interested in the drug part as the resilience that men have and women have, because it kind of seems like women have it a little easier in the dynamics of what we're speaking now.
Right.
I think there's, for what I would say to that, from my perspective, is that the connection that women need to have and function in best tends to be with other women because it's hard to feel connected to men. Because the men, when the men separate in that way, then that connection piece is lost. And I think that's been something that women have been really looking for. That's why the feminization of men, that women are asking for feeling exchanges with men so that there is that connection. And that's been really grossly misunderstood at all levels, because again, we're not really talking about it, we're just kind of expressing it. And that is the place where we do connect, is through feelings. I mean, I think that's what PTSD is. That's why war has been so horrendous. I mean, consider what we put men through. My God, you're expected to walk through somebody else's house, wake them up in the middle of the night with their kids and all of that, and like them. Really? And they're not supposed to dislike you for that? Give me a break. I mean, and shooting children and just seeing all of that and knowing that that's part of what you're expected to do to protect your country, and it goes so against everything that you feel inside. I mean, of course people come back broken from that. How could you not? I mean, it's just absurd to even think that we would put people in that situation and not have problems. I don't understand that. I just don't. And we don't ever talk about it. You know, they still have to come through being tough for the country and being able to justify that kind of stuff in some sort of level in order to be able to function naturally. And that's an unnatural way of looking at life. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. Other critters don't kill themselves when they fight, except by accident. We are almost the only species that kills itself,
Right.
you know, consistently over
Good.
and over again.
Our own species. Other
Yeah.
species don't kill their own.
Don't do that. They just once you know the other one's more powerful, you go, okay, it's your game, and you leave. And everybody's fine with that. We don't do that. Mark, we're gonna miss you. We want to hear from you, even though you're eating.
Yes, it's great to be with you all, and good good fertile soil to be playing in. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Yes,
To you
yes.
too.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Be well. Speak soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Yeah.
Boy. Deep dive it is.
Yeah, emotions are so dangerous because when you start bringing them up, then all of this ridiculousness starts to be obvious. And it's just hard to feel when you're in a space of such manipulation and disdain and arrogance and all those other things that come up in those spaces. I mean, we just couldn't do what half the things we do if we would feel what it feels like. We just wouldn't do it. I mean, you just couldn't do it. And I think that's part of the indigenous lesson, which is why they, at least in some of the cultures, there was such a partnership with women and understanding where a woman's feelings could come into the situation and be relevant and acceded to because they had brought in a sense of wisdom and truth that is hard to get to if you're not feeling in that situation. And so when those feelings are respected and discussed and explored and evaluated, and then it works. You know, it's not like, oh, just you don't like that, so okay, we're not going to do it. Why don't you like it? What is going on with you around that? That's where the truth lies. And it's really important to have that space where you can explore those feelings. It's not that the feeling controls, it's that the reason why the feeling is there is important. And if we would be more courageous in exploring that and open and exploring that, we would not do half the things we do. We just wouldn't. We would come up with alternatives that would resolve these things.
Mm. Mm. I'm certainly a product of all that you're saying in terms of the difference between men and women, and it's easier for me to relate to women than it is for me to relate with men. And I realize it's not a choice I've made, it's a conditioning I have, a social conditioning. That pisses me off. Look what I've missed out on. Oh,
Well, I'd obviously express it much differently than you would, but that's essentially what I was getting at to the realization. It's actually last Wednesday, no, Tuesday night. You know, that in order to speak authentically as to what I bring into this world naturally, I mean, but also from the various social interactions, the learning that I've had, it's built a, you know, a presence. You know, bunch of us have referred to it as a gift, you know, to those we meet. But it's only the gift if it's really coming from a place of authenticity within oneself, you know, of having to really assess why I did certain things and to be okay with it and to sort out what was a misdirection. I mean, you know, been through plenty of those, and to sort them out from what was truly in alignment with, you know, the nature and character I was born with. Because some of it's natural and not just upbringing.
Mhm.
You know, it's
true.
I think that's what emotions point to,
yeah.
actually.
I mean,
That-
these things can be sorted out,
Mhm,
and there's just much more power once you do.
mhm, mhm.
Um, now, I took a funny attitude through a large portion of my life because I took it in on myself. You know, I wasn't good enough, you know, to fulfill
Well, yeah,
these
well, that's, yep, yep, yep.
and but I've learned to realize that I took away that where I had agency, and I was very pleased with what I was able to do. In other words, my memories are very sweet.
Nice.
I've weeded out those memories of failure because for some parts of my life they were continuous failure, without realizing the things that were working all around me, which I began to focus on rather than the other stuff was deadbeat. And, you know, in the past 10 years, I've been able to see that they fell together perfectly, you know, and I'm becoming the way I am most naturally productive and energetic. But last Tuesday night was really sort of a coming to ground, going into that situation with the intention, which was stronger than any backflow, any feelings that might come across, you know, to just really be there, be alive, and receive people in their needs, whatever that might be.
Hmm.
And I don't think there's anything else that I can do in this life, but it's really powerful. Just
Are you referring to the night you talked until 3 a.m. to the
well,
mail?
that was a long time ago. I'm referring to last Tuesday night when I'm talking to this woman whose husband had died 4 months ago, and this was her first time to really put herself out in public, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, one of the things that happens when a loved one dies is you really fear they'll be forgotten.
yeah,
And you feel really uncomfortable talking about them because other people are uncomfortable about you talking about them.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to be able to talk to somebody about the person you loved
Oh,
and be received.
I just felt that I had to bring it up.
Yeah,
And,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
and she started telling me all about special things they built into their house, and she
Yeah.
felt them there whenever, you know.
Yeah,
It was very
that
beautiful.
was wonderful. Yeah, nice, a very nice gift.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for being like that, for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean,
We are wonderful when we're real.
Yeah,
We just are.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why we hide from ourselves so much.
well, it's basically about hiding.
Mhm.
And it's caused by how susceptible, I guess we all are. I mean, I can only speak from personal experience in many ways, but I keep reading that it's absolutely universal. Is that we're in a little cage, you know, of what we've been brought up to believe. And it's time to get out of that.
Yeah.
Time to change the story.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but I remember that Barbara Marx Hubbard would always talk about telling a new story, the new story of humanity,
Yeah.
the conscious evolution.
I used to call it changing my history.
Yeah.
You know, because there were two sides to remember. I began to find out, this is actually fairly long ago. I started working on the idea that I was choosing to remember very hurtful aspects of my history.
Mm.
If I chose to only remember the good things, changed everything. It's so starkly different. It was astounding to me at first.
Mm.
That's one of the reasons I started writing a lot of memories, you know, specific things that happened, like going on a bike ride with my stepson and his best friend at the time, and just all the nuances of what occurred during this 10-mile bike ride over the mountain and back again. I mean, it was, and I was not a trained bicyclist either. The young man, my stepson's friend, was, you know, he's ranked nationally. And I remember, this was the closing line of the story, was I remembered to ask him, you know, how are you feeling, you know, after that ride? And he said, oh, my legs hurt, I'm tired. And I said, oh, you've made my day.
Oh.
It was so funny to remember it that way is a whole lot different than to remember, oh yeah, I had to walk my bike up every hill.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I do allow that he might have been placating me because he was in top-notch shape, but it was good to hear anyway.
Yeah.
I love these deep dives. My heart's always touched and opened more, and I feel so much on our exchanges. Thank you again, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Hmm.
And we will see each other again next week.
Okay, I look forward to it.
At this junction, I'll have to say I might not be able to come.
Okay.
Okay.
I seem to have a lot of possibilities next Friday of meetings, online
Okay.
meetings, and
Okay.
the afternoon is around 2 o'clock is when, you know, is my the point during the day when I have reached my limit and I have to start getting very tired.
Yeah. All right. Well, bless you both. Thank you for.
Okay, we will see you both as soon as we can.
Okay. All right.
And I will do my best to be here.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
My time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.